Which contradicts evolution.
Not at all, not at all. There are tiny mutations. The vast majority are neutral. Some of them can be negative, and then a tiny, tiny amount can prove to be beneficial to the organism. And the thing is, evolution doesn't happen to single animals, it happens across populations over eons of time. Over absolute eons of time. For example, there was accidentally introduced onto an island, I can't remember where it was, I do apologise, I can't remember which island it was. There was a species of lizard that was accidentally introduced onto an island somewhere in the tropics. I can't remember where it is. I think it was off South America. And this particular species was well known, very similar to this. And then within about 30 years, because it found itself in an environment it had never found itself in before, over this 30 years, the shape of its jaw throughout the entire population has started to change to adjust to the food that's there. And I know that you're going to say that it's still a lizard. Yeah. It's still the same kind as you call it.
The DNA allowed it to adjust itself to the surroundings.
Yeah, but if you take that and spread that kind of change, and let's say, for example, then a population then gets separated.
It's still got the same DNA.
A dog is never produced
that animal.
But
creature.
A dog is...
I was just going to say, I mean, I could grant you as a Christian that term, if you like, microevolution, we would call it variety within a kind, you know, where you have, you know, but basically, yeah, two dogs aren't going to create a non-dog. It's never been observed.
But that's not how it works. But that's not how evolution works. No, it doesn't work like that. Of course it couldn't. But then we're talking about spread over millions, sometimes billions of years of time. And how for that, if a dog did give birth to a non-dog, that would completely disprove evolution. It's not. That's completely not what evolution is about at all.
But evolution has never been proved.
Well, okay. Here's this one thing I was going to say, and I'll leave you guys alone because I know you're volunteers and you don't need to get crap. But I don't need to believe in it. I accept it because the evidence is there.
Whatever language you want to use.
But by you saying this, I'll talk this one thing. That's the thing I was going to say a minute ago that I've never heard a creationist give an acceptable answer to. But we know the scientific community.
Does it either?
Well, I haven't said what it is yet. But for you to say that it is wrong, then you are saying that 95% of the American Academy of Sciences, the Royal Society, over 90% of biologists worldwide, etc., are completely wrong. Like or there's some sort of conspiracy to keep this kind of stuff out.
DNA is unique to each animal, each group. There are no subdivisions or anything.
Yeah, but the DNA evidence, do you think it's a slightly coincidental...
Apes and man, they try to find a missing link. They never
This
will.
brings me exactly on to my point.
They never will.
No, sorry,
I'm just going to add interest in your point when you said that 95%, I don't dispute your figures even, but that in itself obviously is not evidence that the majority believes something. Galileo was a minority, you know, hopelessly outnumbered with his beliefs, which are actually mentioned in Job about, you know, the world being spherical.
But he was a believing Catholic as well, but he was tortured by the Catholic Church for trying to explain the Copernican theory.
Exactly, but truthfully, and there's some lovely Catholics out there, but Catholics is very distorted. It's not true Christianity. It's not biblical. But Catholicism has done many things that are so contrary to this book, and doing those kind of things through crusades are all contrary to it. So I don't condone that.
No, I'm sure. I'm good. I'm glad you don't. But by what authority do you call?
You're not time.
Say the Pope's a heretic? By what authority would you say that the Pope's a heretic?
Well, it's not for me. All of us ultimately are going to, as Christians, I would believe we're going to have to, you know, there'll be a judgment day before God, and that's between him and God. I'm not interested in calling someone a heretic, but certainly that's something that every individual will have to give an account for.
So, would you say, do you believe in original sin?
I believe, yes.
Original sin is, we believe it's comes from Adam and Eve when they lost their righteousness once they sinned, and Christ came to redeem man from that original sin all the way back to Adam. That's what we believe in.
I think there's those two things are unbelievably immoral. For example, it's like saying, I can't remember who said it, but being created sick and then commanded to be well on pain of death, basically, or pain of eternal torture. But sorry, and also the doctrine of vicarious redemption by human sacrifice, I think, is just one of the most... I mean, I know it's like one of the central teachings of Christianity, but I think it's one of the most immoral things to actually say that if I were present at that time and I could have prevented it, it should have been stopped. That it's not moral to throw your sins onto somebody else and be washed clean. I think that's utterly immoral.
Jesus willingly did that.
He did that,
love for us.
but we have to believe in
Yeah,
him.
but since then, for the 2,000 years since then, we've been told that unless we accept this so-called gift, what have we been told? That basically, if you accept it, oh, wonderful. You know, we're saying we're being offered it, and then we can accept it. But then, if you don't, then we've been told that we will go into eternal hellfire. I think that's terrible. I think that's awful.
But I think you mentioned an interesting word a couple of times there, which is morality, and which would suggest that you do believe and you have got a moral compass. There is a right and a wrong.
Absolutely.
And if
it's founded on reason.
Well, let's just investigate that then, because if we have right and wrong, we do agree there's good and evil. And if it's good and evil,
well, for want of a better word,
there is a line of demarcation between the two. There is a moral law between the two. And if there is a moral law, it implies a lawgiver.
Not necessarily.
Where are you getting right from wrong? Who can make that statement?
Okay, well, let's say...
What is good and what is evil?
If we're talking... I'm assuming you put a lot of worth into the Ten Commandments.
Certainly, yeah. Not justified by that, just brings knowledge.
But obviously, 10 Commandments, that's just 10 of the 613 laws that were written down.
Different laws. There was moral law, there was ceremonial laws.
Sure, but there are also laws that tell you how to keep a slave, about punching a hole through his ear, about how you can beat them as long as they don't die after, 3 days? And
sure,
that's fine. They're historical.
About how you should, if your wife is not a virgin on her wedding night, you're supposed to stone her to death on her
Why
really?
Read the context in which they're written, though, because I agree with you. If you read them at face value, Leviticus, books like that.
How can you believe something? How can you believe one thing? I'm not a specialist or anything about this.
Sure.
How can you believe something? What's written back then, like 100%, and something else completely dismiss it?
Because when you read it, and that's what I encourage you to do, really, is to read it.
So who says that's right and that bit's wrong? Is that something you've?
It says in the book what we still.
So it says some parts aren't real.
No, it says some parts aren't real.
Jesus
came to
accounts.
fulfill the law. We're told Jesus came to fulfill the law, which he did, because we couldn't do it. In the times of ancient Israel, there was laws given by God. Before Jesus came, it was a way of having righteousness with God. Before we couldn't have it before Jesus, sacrifices, etc.
The way of the top.
But you're saying though that until the Ten Commandments came along, that we thought that theft, murder, rape, perjury,
those were all man-made before Christ came.
But people knew about them because they have a conscience, which God has given everyone. But because we became so detached from God, so sinful, our conscience was actually clouded. And God gave us that knowledge clearly in the law, but we had it before that in our conscience, which we still have now.
But there's the thing is, I mean, the way that I see every human society, and let's face it, most human societies have not been Christian.